Hi everyone and welcome to another video. In this series of videos I'm going to be covering the life of Bruce Lee. In the previous video we got up to where he arrived in Seattle in 1959. In this video I'm going to be covering from then up until around 1964, a period of 5 years. As Bruce Lee was only 32 when he passed away, in those 32 years he managed to change the world. So these 5 years, there's a lot of stuff going on, so I'm going to do my best to kind of not leave anything out. If you haven't already subscribed, guys, it'd be amazing. Obviously drop a like. If you like the video, hit the like button. And as I say, guys, if you've got any questions, please feel free to drop it in the comments section. And I promise I'll do my best. So, from 1959, he arrived in Seattle. So, he took a job at Ruby Chow's restaurant, where he was a waiter. That was kind of because obviously he arrived in Seattle. I think he had like $100 or something. Obviously, it's not going to last him very long, so that's what he done to kind of keep the wages coming in. But Bruce Lee, he actually started teaching martial arts. I mean, what else would Bruce Lee do, right? So back in Hong Kong, when he was obviously training Wing Chun. He never completed the system, but that was his primary style. He was the high school boxing champion of Hong Kong, and he traded with a lot of different kung fu instructors and students, trading information, and then them giving him information. So when he arrived in Seattle, the first thing he did was started teaching martial arts. And those are the arts that he kind of, even at that age, he would have been about 19, 20. Even at that age, he started formulating his own style. So that style was to become known as Jun Fan Gungfu, or literally Bruce Lee Kung Fu. However, when he arrived, he started teaching. He had many students in the Seattle area, but he started teaching in like basements, car parks, things like that. So it's very like informal. The students didn't pay him any fees, and no uniform, nothing like that. Not what we'd nowadays look at a martial arts school. It was nothing like that. Now, after around I guess like 9 months to a year, they suggested to him, well, to keep his money going, for them to pay him membership fees. So that is when he secured his own premises. The students got uniforms, became a lot more structured and a lot more formal. And that is what became known as the Jun Fan Gungfu Institute. As I say, he had many students. The highest ranked student being Taki Kimura, who's recently passed on. He was his highest ranked student. And when he eventually left Seattle, he was the guy who Bruce left in charge of running the Seattle school. And the school was running, the school is still running, I believe, in the hands of Taki's son, Andy Kimura. But yeah, so that's what happened. When he arrived in Seattle, yes, he started teaching martial arts, but I believe he had to finish his high school. So he enrolled at the Edison Technical School, or college, where he graduated in around 1961. And then he straight away enrolled at the University of Washington. Now, he majored in philosophy, but I believe he studied a few different subjects. I'm not quite sure what they were. But philosophy was his kind of main thing there. And that is obviously, for me personally, is kind of what I know him as. Also, yes, being a film star, a martial artist, but a philosopher. So that is what he studied. That would have been around 1961 when he enrolled in that. He met more students there, and he also met his wife there, Linda Lee. At that time, Linda Emery. And they kind of got on well. She came to his classes, they got on, started dating, and then was eventually to become his wife. So that that was up until around 1963, when Bruce then dropped out of the university, didn't graduate, and then shut up shop, left Taki Kimura in charge, and then moved to Oakland, California. Now in Oakland, California, him and Linda stayed at James Lee's house. Now James Lee, he was already a Kung Fu instructor. He was around 20 years Bruce's senior, I believe. And there's this young Chinese kid, really, who completely changed the way James Lee was going in his life. I think he was a Pak Mai Kung Fu instructor, but kind of saw Bruce, and they got along, and kind of saw the far more sort of realistic approach that Bruce was taking, and then that kind of changed him. Now, 1963 to 1964, Bruce was set up a school in Oakland. Now, again, the same thing. He taught many different students. I believe at James Lee's house, like they had a garage set up. They had a wooden dummy, different training equipment, and that's where James Lee had students, brought them in. Bruce had his students, they brought them in, and occasionally he'd go back to Seattle to kind of check the school out in Seattle. Now that is when Bruce received, a challenge, I guess. Now, anyone who's watched a previous video of mine, Birth of the Dragon review, will know this story, but for anyone who doesn't know, Bruce was challenged by the Chinese community because they were not very keen on the fact that Bruce was teaching anyone and everyone. Now, I say anyone and everyone, you had to put the effort in, you had to be sincere in what you were doing. He wouldn't just teach anyone, but he didn't go on colour, race, nationality, anything like that. You know, if you were sincere, he'd teach you. Now, they sent him a challenge saying, well, you're not going to teach our Chinese secrets, Asian secrets to anyone of any nationality. So you've got to stop teaching, or we'll send one of our top guys out to fight you. And if he wins, you've got to stop teaching. Or stop teaching these different, you can only teach Chinese. So that is what happened. Now, they had a match in Oakland. The man's name was Wong Jack Man. Now, he was obviously one of their top guys, top Kung Fu instructors. And they had this match. Now, different stories kind of have different results, different durations, but the most common story is that the fight lasted about 3 minutes, and supposedly, might be right, might be wrong, Bruce got the guy down to the ground and said, "Do you give up? Do you give up?" To which he said, "Yep, okay, I'll give up." And then they left. So the long and short of it is he carried on teaching these students, whoever he wanted, really. Now, that's going to be in the next video, but that is when he started to change completely his martial art philosophy, the way he trained, the techniques he used, training methods he used. And then that was kind of the period when he started, in a few short years, looking like the Bruce Lee we all know. Anyone who's seen a picture of Bruce Lee, it's more than likely it would have been after that period when you've got this kind of physically sculpted body. We all know what he looks like. But before then, he was a fit guy, was an excellent martial artist, but he kind of took a completely different approach to his training. So that would be in the next video, guys. So that was the period from 1959 to 1964. Obviously, a lot's happened in that time. I've tried to cover it without boring you too much, but that is what happened in that period. In the next video, I'm going to be covering the next period when he had the birth of his son and then moved to Los Angeles and then had the next stage of his career. Okay, so hope you enjoyed that, guys. As I say, I'll be back with more. There's a lot to cover, but I hope you're bearing with me. And until the next video, I'll see you then.